Hello guys, Colonel Ninny here.
If you've flown IL2 Battle of Stalingrad multiplayer, you've probably come across Combat Box. And Combat Box is unique for many reasons. Namely that the leaders like Alonso and Sketch spend a lot of time, money and effort in trying to bring the community an interesting and challenging set of scenarios. Now they're trying something different. This weekend, October 15-16, they are playtesting their new dynamic campaign. In this video, I'm going to run through their draft manual to show you how the game mechanics should work. It's pretty cool. Like other dynamic servers, we will have the ebb and flow of a dynamic campaign with our own handmade custom objectives that Combat Box is known for. Like other servers, the front line will move depending on how players interact with these objectives. Additionally, there will be a win condition for the campaign, mostly in supplies such as fuel, ammo, pilots and planes. A side can also win by taking more than 75% of the enemy's territory. So players can log into the server at any time and take part in this dynamic campaign. They can take off from any airfield and use any available airplane. There are a few unique features. Like other servers, we will have a dynamic campaign where players interact with objectives, and when they do, it influences the outcome of the war. Although not yet implemented, there will be some unique missions. We'll refer to possessed pilots not as those who've been demonized, but those that the player owns and controls. For example, players that opt into a possessed pilot character will be able to choose between 3 to 5 auto-generated missions based on the current status of the war. These missions will range in difficulty and will list out rewards, punishments and other consequences. Squadrons will be able to perform these missions together as a group through the mission details page before the squadron spawns in. Another idea not yet implemented is pilot progression through fame. Most players don't understand the current stat system. How does one get more points? How does one get to the top of the leaderboard? Our stats will not represent the player, but the pilot that the player possessed instead. This is the opt-in feature that will be unique to our campaign. The player's pilot will be awarded when successful, and the players will be able to see their pilot's success by viewing their pilot's detail page. Players will want their pilot to stay alive as long as possible to gain as many points for their pilot as they can. These points will be called fame, and the more fame a pilot has, the more recognition he will receive, including promotions, awards, and more. Players will attempt to make legends out of their virtual pilot. Legends will be remembered in the museum right next to the first Apollo mission to the moon. The last concept, not yet implemented, is allowing passive players. During the campaign, players don't have to opt in and can just get into the server for a quick dogfight. When they do, they still possess a pilot automatically. In this way, they are influencing the dynamic campaign by their efforts, and they can return to their pilot if they choose to opt in. Of course, the pilot character will not become famous, and passive players influence the outcome of the war less so than their opted-in counterparts. This is a great option for novices trying to get into the multiplayer system. Let's look now at some of the technical notes. The campaign definition. It's based on mostly static, handcrafted objectives on the Rhineland map. It begins in September 1944 and follows the course of the war across Europe. The campaign progresses day by day, and a campaign day in an IL2 mission is 2 hours long. And some campaign elements, such as aircraft availability, are affected by the date. Each campaign day includes randomized weather, time of day, and wind direction. Airfield locations contain multiple spawn points to account for the different wind directions to ensure the pilots can take off in the correct direction from their spawn point. Airfields can be attacked but will be heavily defended by randomly generated AA positions. Each day the positions will change. Strategic objectives include location, blocks that comprise the objective and AAA positions nearby. And there may be some decorative blocks that are not part of the campaign but which might be destroyed during the battle. The campaign state gives the current situation in a campaign, including supply state for each airfield from 0 to 200 for both Allies and Axis. The supply state for each strategic objective from 0 to 300 depending on the size of the objective. Small objectives have 100 supply, medium objectives and airfields have 200, and strategic objectives have 300. It also gives the front line position and the destruction state for every block in the campaign. In other words, each time a pilot destroys an item on the map, the campaign system remembers this information. As the campaign progresses, the objectives and towns nearby will become more and more damaged as we track player actions. CB radio integration. This is pretty cool stuff. Each day in the campaign brings a new configuration of the map. The Apollo campaign system automatically creates a CB radio configuration file allowing pilots who use SRS to get GCI support from Convoy, Longbow or Command, as they would on a regular combat box mission. If you're unfamiliar with using SRS on combat box, check out my video. There's also a dynamic map location for each day's mission. As you might imagine, the full campaign takes place across the entire IL2 Rhineland map. There are many airfields and strategic locations that might be included during the full course of the campaign, more than would make sense to use for fun gameplay in an individual mission. The campaign generator manages the supply state and front line for the entire campaign map, but chooses a specific gameplay area for each day's mission. This gameplay area is known as the combat box. The mission generator looks at the front line and positions the day's mission in approximately a 150 km by 150 km area, which is centered on the midpoint of the front line. This midpoint is influenced by the previous day's action. The system tries to move the play area to keep up with the hottest area on the map. Objectives are controlled by one side until either the front line moves past the objective and it's captured, or the objective is damaged enough to reduce its supply value to 0. Objectives do not change sides in one mission roll. They first become neutral for one day in the campaign, and then, depending on the position of the front line, they switch to being controlled by the side that owns that territory. At the completion of a day of the campaign, damage done to the objectives is used to reduce the supply to that objective. Objectives and airfields resupply each other by moving supply from well-supplied to weakly supplied points. Supply only moves towards the front line, however airfields are useful in that they can bring supply in by air. This effectively creates a free supply rather than moving from somewhere else on the map. Dynamic airfield configuration. Each airfield contains multiple possible spawn points as mentioned. The best spawn point is chosen based on the wind conditions for the day in the campaign. And some airfields feature upwards of 4 spawn points, others just a couple. As usual with combat box missions, the active runway is marked with signal flares, and you can request airfield conditions on SRS Channel 2 to get an update from the airfield controller. Total War. Previous combat box missions have included protected airfields where vultures are kicked from the server. The campaign does not include any safe spaces. In fact, player airfields are valid and strategic targets and likely to be attacked by the enemy. That said, they are well defended and have considerable anti-aircraft capability. With the current size of the campaign play area, the combat box, both sides usually have upwards of 6 airfields available on any particular day in the campaign. This should mean the players at least have a choice of taking off under fire or moving to a safer airfield. Moving the front line. All military strategists will agree that wars are not won by soldiers but by logistics. So once the player actions are processed, we calculate the new supply value for each objective. Then we recalculate the position of the front line. Objectives and airfields radiate an influence across the map, and using the previous day's front line as a starting point, we move along the front line calculating the new midpoint for no man's land between the two sides. Then we move the front line to match the new midpoint. In this example, Allied forces are shown in yellow and red in the heat map, and Axis forces in blue and purple. The campaign system has calculated this information and plotted a front line between the two sets of influence, working its way along the no man's land in between the two sides. Interesting to note here that the new front line is calculated without taking into account any repair or resupply effects. This is to ensure immediate results when players heavily damage or destroy an objective during a day in the campaign. We'd like that objective to be clearly destroyed or out of action for at least another day in the campaign. While it could be possible for one side to do serious damage to the other in one day of the campaign, the front line will take a while to move. So in reality, it's likely that only one or two objectives will be captured each day. So the side that captures objectives can use them to radiate influence into enemy territory and continue the push. Attacking rear objectives still serves an important purpose, however, as it softens up the enemy and reduces supply available to reinforce the front line. To me, that is immensely important. If the supplies don't get to the front, you don't have to fight them. Reinforcement, resupply, and repair. After the front line has moved and any destroyed or captured objectives have been flipped to neutral, the airfields and objectives resupply each other. Airfields resupply nearby friendly units by a maximum of 20, within a distance of 30 kilometers. There's a linear fall-off. A 100 supply airfield resupplying an objective 15 kilometers away will resupply it only by 10. Objectives with at least 50 supply donate supplies to nearby objectives that have less supply, again with linear fall-off, and starting with objectives that have the most supply to donate. Objectives reduce their own supply by the amount they donated to friendlies. Airfields can only resupply another objective by the level of supply the airfield has. So a heavily damaged airfield at 10 supply can only resupply nearby objectives by a small amount. Once supplies have moved between airfields and objectives, the airfields themselves receive 10 supply in airdrop repairs to a maximum of 30 supply across the whole map. Supplies are used to repair objectives and airfields. In general, smaller items will be repaired faster than larger ones. And as the campaign progresses, objectives will become visually more and more damaged, and as big items such as hangars and industrial buildings take a long time to repair. Aircraft availability. The amount of supply at an airfield, as well as its distance from the front line, determines which airframes and loadouts are available. Pay attention here. If an airframe is available at an airfield on a particular day, it's available in infinite numbers. But supply dwindles as you get closer to the front line. Because of this, players will get worse airframes at the front line with more limited loadouts. Rear airfields tend to have more airframe choices, more mods, and better loadouts. In short, if you want a highly modified, better machine, you're going to have to fly it further to the front line. Player airfields always have repair, rearm, and refuel marked by signal smoke. And each airfield has a normal spawn and a mission spawn not yet implemented. Regardless of where a player spawns, they are taking part in the campaign. Normal spawns are always active. Players attempting to fly a mission will need to pick the correct loadout for their aircraft. If they choose an incorrect loadout, the system should give them a warning. Airfields are valid targets for player attacks, and many of the best aircraft types are only available when an airfield has a large amount of supply, or is at least a certain distance from the front line. Doing damage to enemy airfields is a good tactic for reducing the airframes available to them. The dynamic convoy system. Now the system contains several dozen rail and road convoys. These are activated based on the day's play area and up to 3 convoys per side. If a convoy arrives at its destination, it will bring a supply bonus to that location. It is very much in the player's interest to attack and defend convoys. And that pretty much covers it for now. Please give your campaign feedback on Combat Box Discord. Thanks for watching, guys.
As always, if you've enjoyed this video, found it helpful, please like it or subscribe. Or if there's another topic you'd like me to cover, please leave a comment. Thank you, guys.